In a world full of wars, Yuan tries to become the best demon hunter along with his brother, so they embark on a journey where they activate a secret weapon that will completely change their lives. The anime begins with the story of the demon king named Bozun, who gathered a great army and attacked the realm of the gods. Thus, the war between demons and gods began. Therefore, a guardian god named Shu Tian defeated many demons until a celestial demon betrayed him and shattered his spirit into 72 pieces, which fell to the earth. Seeing this, the god Shiji used all his power to imprison both gods and spirits in the void of a temple. However, it left a great imbalance in the realm, which can only be repaired by Shu Tian. Some time later, our protagonist named Yuan grabs his younger brother Zio and runs away while their home is destroyed. Then, he goes to his father, who is fighting a demon, which throws him against a rock and tries to attack Yuan. However, the father stops him and throws Yuan away to keep him safe. Then, he tries to strangle the demon with chains, but it breaks them. Next, the father performs a spell and chains the demon. Finally, he causes rocks to fall on him, trapping him for a while. After this, he flees with Yuan, mentioning that he can only stop the demon for a moment. Later, they enter a cave where Yuan's father casts a spell and opens a door that reveals 2 swords buried in a rock. They both take them, and a mysterious piece appears. Consequently, the father gives it to Yuan, stating that he should give it to Zio when he grows up. He also gives him the other sword, saying they are for him. Just then, they realize that the demon has been released and is coming for them, so they continue to run until it appears and attacks the father. So, he uses another of his spells to encase him in a large ball and throws him into the lava. When everything seems to be over, a woman appears behind them and pierces the father's chest. This makes Yuan start to cry. Seeing this, his father casts one last spell and encases them in a sphere to send them away. Then, the woman attacks Yuan and cuts his cheek. However, they disappear immediately. A few years later, Yuan teams up with Zio to enter a temple, and Zio dresses up as a lizard. Later, the temple owner pays a supposed sorcerer named Pei to get rid of the lizard. So, Pei performs his spells while the man runs away. As a result, he finds the lizard and decapitates it. He gets scared when he realizes it's actually his partner. Upon hearing this, Yuan knocks out Pei and ties him up. When he wakes up, Pei confesses that he's not a real sorcerer, and that the lizard is his partner for making easy money. Therefore, Zio puts the lizard head on him and leaves him there to be discovered. Later, Yuan holds a grand ceremony and welcomes Zio as a demon hunter. He also gives him the gift their father left him. When Zio opens it, he realizes it's an iron staff. However, he doesn't know what it's for. Then, an old man appears and asks Yuan to help him defeat a cat demon who has taken over his village called Leah. However, Yuan refuses, thinking it's probably a deception, so he leaves with Zio until he accidentally sees the necklace that the demon who killed his father had. Then, he agrees to go to the village, thinking he'll find her there. Upon arriving, they encounter a tense fog. Suddenly, Yuan realizes that Zio has disappeared, so he tries to find him when the cat demon appears and attacks him with swift movements. Therefore, Yuan uses a special technique and creates a powerful vortex, hitting the demon, who tries to seduce him to spare her. He then asks her about the necklace, to which she replies that she found it by chance. So, Yuan lets her go, but she attacks him from behind. After this, Yuan draws his swords and makes her disappear while she tells him that his brother will kill Zio. On the other hand, he faces the demon, who throws him to the ground, claiming he is very weak. However, Zio grabs a stick and attacks the demon, avoiding its blows. Then, the demon gets angry and draws its claws. In this way, it starts hurting him until it breaks the stick, so Yuan tries to intervene. But then the iron staff activates, and Zio thrusts it into the demon's chest, causing a wave of power to sweep across the world, even seen by the demons who killed their father. Subsequently, Zio remains motionless while the cat demon tries to remove the staff from his chest. However, Yuan approaches him and asks about the necklace, threatening him with death. Then, he confesses that the necklace belongs to the Chosen One, who said they would find them if they had the necklace. Therefore, Yuan asks him where she is. At this point, the necklace begins to fly and enters the cat's mouth, causing it to explode. Later, Zio wakes up, so Yuan congratulates him for defeating the demon. Then, he grabs his staff, which returns to its small size. Just at this moment, a girl with a pig's face appears, and a boy named Sha, who realizes that Zio's staff is what they are looking for. Therefore, both approach the boys. Then, Zio introduces himself, but the girl named Zhu tells him to hand over the staff. However, Yuan attacks her with his swords, but she hits him and throws him to the ground. Additionally, she threatens him with her weapon until Sha stops them and heals Yuan's internal injuries. Then, he shows them that Zio's staff is actually the divine weapon of a guardian god. They introduce themselves as messengers of the immortals. Subsequently, Ju removes her pig mask, revealing that she is actually a beautiful girl. Sha tells the boys that a long time ago, the god Shu Tian was betrayed by another and scattered into 72 fragments throughout the earth, leaving his staff as the only option to find them. He explains that by activating the staff, a signal of energy traveled across the world, so the demons under King Baksun will surely be looking for it. On the other hand, Ju tells Zio that to free the gods and restore peace, they need that staff. Upon hearing this, Zio hands over the staff. However, Ju gets angry, claiming it's a fake. However, Sha realizes that it only activates in Zio's hands, so Ju tells both of them to travel with them in search of the fragments. Therefore, Zio activates the staff, which points them in the direction they should go, so they board Ju's ship to go after the fragment. On the way, the boys start eating like animals, so Ju gets angry and tells them to eat properly. However, Yuan ignores her and steals a chicken leg. On the other hand, a girl stands in the middle of the road, so the ship crashes to avoid hitting her. Then, Yuan sees the girl and rushes to her aid, and she faints in his arms. After that, Yuan sees that she is injured, so he decides to take her on board. However, Ju stands in the way and tells him that they won't let an unknown person on their ship. In response, Yuan tells her that she's jealous because the woman has a better figure than her. Later, the woman wakes up and thanks him for healing her wounds. She tells them that the night before, she encountered some bandits who hurt her while trying to escape. Subsequently, the woman asks them to take her to the dark canyon because she's afraid of encountering those bandits again. In response, Yuan mentions that they are also heading in that direction to look for the fragments, and Zio shows her his staff and tells her everything, which annoys Ju, who tells him to keep it a secret from the woman. Finally, Sha tells everyone to get some rest, and the woman thanks them and introduces herself as Zai. In the evening, she tries to remove the necklace with the staff from Zio, but stops when she hears Ju, who enters the room after taking a hot bath. The next day, Yuan tells Zio about his dream when suddenly he realizes that he doesn't have the staff, and Zai is gone. On the one hand, he approaches the dark canyon. In this, he remembers the bandits who kidnapped his sister and told him he had to steal the divine staff for them if he wanted to have her back. In addition, the leader of these bandits showed him one of the fragments of Shu Tian, claiming that with that power and the staff, he could control all the demons. However, his sister, Yang, told him not to steal anything, as doing so would break his oath, and he would suffer eternal pain. Nevertheless, Jai accepted the deal, so he continues on his way to save his sister. On the other hand, Ju fights with Yuan for losing the staff until Sha stops them and gets off the ship. Then, he tells them that the staff is near them. Meanwhile, Jai encounters the bandits and hands the staff to the leader, who releases her sister. Therefore, both of them leave when suddenly one of the bandits stands in their way. Then, the leader tells them that they won't let her go. Afterward, Jai uses her spiderweb ring to tie the bandits' feet, then tries to use the staff, but seeing that it doesn't work, she throws spiderweb in the face of the other bandit, and they run away. However, Young stumbles, so they catch up with them and attack Jai, who pushes her sister so she won't get hurt. Then, Young tries to hit the bandit, but he stops her and takes his knife to harm her. Nevertheless, Jai throws him against the wall using some spiderweb. Later, the leader attacks her with his sword, but Jai avoids his blows until he lifts a rock and hits her, leaving her on the ground. Then, he tells Yang to run, but the bandit frees himself and locks them in a diamond barrier. Consequently, Sha shows the location of the staff to the boys, so Yuan states they should split up to find it. Later, Yuan and Sao see the bandit leader, while Yang begs him to release them when she sees that Jai is starting to bleed. Therefore, the leader sets them free and tries to touch Yang. Then, Jai cuts him with her spiderweb, making him angry and using his power to attack her. Afterward, Yang stands in between, receiving the attack and falling into Jai's arms. Subsequently, Yuan attacks the leader while Zio tries to hit his brother, but he strikes him. Then, Ju finds them and shoots at Jai. Nevertheless, Yuan deflects her attack, while Zio explains that Jai is not to blame. Therefore, Yuan makes them leave and confronts the bandit, stating that if he doesn't let them go, he will kill him. At this, the leader starts clapping until all the bandits gather and begin to attack. Then, Sha creates a powerful whirlwind and throws them out of the cave. Subsequently, the leader tries to attack Jai, but Sha moves them away using his whirlwind. Then, he creates a powerful lightning bolt, which he hurls at the leader, so he tells Yuan that they will take care of him. So, Zio takes Jai out of the cave, and she apologizes and hands him her staff. On the other hand, the leader uses the spirit of Shu Tian and increases his power to attack Sha, who fires a fire attack. but the leader covers himself with rocks. Subsequently, Ju attacks him and shoots him. Nevertheless, he starts using rocks again. Additionally, he begins throwing rocks at them. So, Sha creates a curtain of water, but the rocks pass through it. Then, Ju uses her weapon again and shoots at the leader. As a result, he remains unscathed, claiming that with the rocks, he is invincible. After this, Sha uses his lightning in the water, causing him to be electrocuted, until Ju shoots him and makes him disappear, thus obtaining Shu Tian's spirit. Outside the cave, the bandit leader's brother attacks the boys. Therefore, Yuan confronts him. Then, he increases his speed and starts hurting him until he encloses him in a crystal sphere. At this, Jai tries to attack him, but the bandit avoids her and begins turning Yuan into stone. Seeing this, Yuan tells Xiao to leave. However, he starts hitting the sphere until his fists break. Then, the bandit strikes him aside. So, he starts crying, stating that he will never be strong enough to protect others. Just then, the staff starts glowing, so Xiao grabs it and strikes the barrier. As a result, Yuan is freed, but Xiao is thrown against the wall by the bandit. Later, he tries to obtain the power of the staff, so Yuan takes advantage of the moment and cuts off one of his arms. Then, he attacks the bandit until the bandit realizes that Yuan is the son of the legendary demon hunter. Therefore, Yuan asks him how he knows about him. As a result, a bell sound rings, and the bandit dies, leaving behind another fragment of Shitian. Back on the ship, Sha tells Jai that her sister's injuries are very serious, so the only option would be to seal her spirit and then ask a god to reincarnate her in another body. As a result, Jai agrees, so Sha places Yang's spirit in his ring. Later, Yuan hands the staff to Xiao, telling him that if they manage to gather all the fragments, they can save Yang. At this, Ju calls him and hands over the 2 fragments they found since the staff serves as a container. At dawn, they continue their search with Jai, who joins them. Later, they arrive in a very hot village, where Xiao gets off the ship, claiming to have a fever, to which Sha comments that it's because the staff absorbed 2 elements, weakening the one who holds it. Then, Jai appears without her jacket, mentioning that it's very hot. Subsequently, they enter a clothing store, where the owner tries to sell a bikini to Jai, but Ju gets angry and hits him, stating that he's a pervert. After this, the owner makes a gesture, and his store turns into magical items, so Ju buys a fairy bean and puts it in Xiao's mouth. Then, the owner explains that these beans relieve discomfort and injuries caused by excessive mana. Therefore, Yuan tries to buy a bag, but he tells him he needs 2 immortal coins or 20 million mortal ones. So, he gets disappointed, and Sha buys them for him. Then, the old man tells them that because of the war between demons and gods, a meteorite fell into the village's furnace, causing the heat to increase rapidly. Since then, the meteorite has been melting, making the heat more abundant. He also states that the furnace is controlled by a group of demons called the Great Blaze. Finally, he comments that the group's leader calls himself Evil Cloud and is the one who rules the village. Upon hearing this, Ju tells the old man that he should have done something as he is also an immortal. In response, he tells her that someone like him couldn't defeat him, as Evil Cloud is a high-ranking demon and controls fire perfectly. That said, Sha asks Xiao to take his staff and give it a spin. By doing so, Sha sees that the meteorite is sending a power signal, so they realize that the other fragment of Shitian is there, and Evil Cloud probably has it under his control. Therefore, Ju and Sha decide to go fight him, with Yuan joining them while asking Jai to take care of Xiao. On the other hand, Evil Cloud meets with his demons in a large building. Meanwhile, the boys arrive there, but Sha realizes that to reach the top floor, he must face many demons, so they try to find another way to save time. However, Yuan doesn't wait and enters the building, defeating all the demons that appear. So they reach a floor where they see many paintings of a very beautiful woman. At this, Evil Cloud appears and claims that this woman is the most beautiful in the world. Then, Yuan charges at him, but he repels him with his flames of fire. Furthermore, he states that Yuan is not part of this because he has been waiting to fight with 2 immortals. However, Yuan attacks him again, and in response, he throws more fire at Yuan, but he is surprised to see that Yuan's swords manage to stop his flames. Then, Sha tells Evil Cloud to stop because if he continues to use fire, he will end up activating the furnace and burning down the whole village. In response, he claims they should give him some of their immortal blood. They realize that his plan is to destroy the Immortals' palace using their blood. So, Ju shoots at Evil Cloud, but he shields himself and ties up her weapon using a whip of fire. Then, Sha tries to extinguish the fire with his water technique, but he doesn't succeed. As a result, Ju's weapon overheats so much that it eventually explodes. Subsequently, Evil Cloud attacks her. Yuan steps in and tells them both to leave since if they shed blood, Evil Cloud's plan will succeed. With that said, both decide to leave to come up with another plan. Meanwhile, the people in the village complain about the heat when they suddenly see the furnace starting to emit fire. Seeing this, the old man from the store realizes that Evil Cloud is angry. Inside the building, Ewan avoids the attacks and attempts to strike him with his swords. However, he disappears and then binds him and throws him against the wall. Nevertheless, Ewan gets back up and tries to hit him, to which Evil Cloud pushes him and hits him hard in the stomach. He then launches his fire attack, but Shaw stops it by creating an ice wall. As a result, Shaw cuts himself and drops a few drops of blood while disappearing along with Ewan. Seeing this, Evil Cloud wets his finger with the blood and creates a spell under the woman's painting. In this way, the meteorite rises while he pushes it towards the Immortal's palace. Zhu claims that she must stop him, but Shaw explains that she can't because being in the mortal realm, they can only use their power at 50%. He also tells her that the meteorite won't reach the palace since it's not in good condition after being on Earth for so long. With that said, the meteorite shatters and starts falling on the same village, so the kids run to the old man's store to figure out how to stop it. Meanwhile, the old man tells Zio and Jai to run with him to the shelter, so they start running until Zio turns back and sees a lonely girl. Rocks fall on them, but Jai uses her web to stop them. Then, they continue on their way to the shelter. When they arrive, Zio sees that Ewan is badly injured. However, the old man assures him that he'll be fine thanks to the magical bean. Later, the shelter starts to suffer damage, so Shaw asks if there is a way to stop everything that's happening. The old man explains that the only weapon that can do it is the cooling core located in the furnaces underground, which is protected by the demons. So the only way to recover it is to steal it without being noticed. Therefore, Jai claims she'll do it. However, Zio says he won't let her do it since she has suffered many misfortunes due to theft. Nevertheless, the old man explains that the core actually belongs to the Immortals, so taking it from the demons wouldn't be considered theft. Jai agrees to do it. She enters the industrial furnace and finds two demons watching the secretary while she dresses, so Jai takes the opportunity to attack them. Then, she enters the secretary's room and pins her against the wall while squeezing one of her breasts. The secretary confesses that the core is in the basement, but to enter, she needs a card, so she tells her there's one in her bag. Immediately, she hits Jai and tries to kick her. However, Jai avoids her and pins her against the wall. She then uses her web to make her talk. Meanwhile, the shelter begins to crumble due to Evil Cloud, who doesn't stop throwing fireballs at it. As a result, Zhu and Shaw decide to go out to stop him. On the other hand, the secretary ends up talking and gives Jai the elevator code to reach the core. So she arrives at the core, but when she gets close, a robot appears and triggers the alarm. Back with Evil Cloud, he continues to destroy the city while reminiscing about how everything used to be. He then travels back to when he met a girl who tried to stop a thief, but the thief pulled a knife on her. However, Evil Cloud appeared and beat up the thief. They began dating and eventually got married. As time went on, demons started causing problems. He trusted that the Immortals would protect them until one day when meteorites began falling on the city. Evil Cloud called his wife to leave the building where she lived. Still, it was too late. After finishing his recollection, Zhu shoots at him, and Evil Cloud covers himself and attacks them with his flames. Shaw immediately creates a frost barrier. Zio appears with his staff to join the fight. He tells Evil Cloud to stop because he is only causing harm to people. Upon hearing this, Evil Cloud begins to remember how he suffered upon finding his wife because of the Immortals. He received power at that moment due to the fragment within the meteorite. He tells Zio that the meteorite destroyed his city due to the Immortals. Following this, Shaw reveals that the meteorite was actually going to collide with the Celestial Palace, but then a god created a shield, causing the meteorite to change direction and hit their city instead. Upon hearing this, Zio is left not knowing what to do, while Evil Cloud concentrates his power and fires at Zhu. Zio reacts and creates a shield around her to protect her. He then mentions to Evil Cloud that if he destroys the city, he'll be just like them, and it won't change anything. It will only bring more suffering because of his thirst for revenge. In response, Evil Cloud loses control and transforms into a giant wolf, claiming he will destroy all the Immortals for the soul of his wife. He proceeds to strike Zio. Meanwhile, Jai manages to defeat the robot and tries to grab the core using her web. As a result, it activates and releases a wave of energy throughout the city. Evil Cloud realizes this and concentrates his power to attack the Immortals. Afterward, Zio uses his remaining magic to teleport himself into the furnace to save Jai. On the other hand, a demon enters the furnace, so Jai hides while the demon approaches the core and takes it, claiming that he can do so by using his ice armor. Right then, Evil Cloud arrives and confronts the demon. They stand face to face until the demon changes shape and turns into a giant bull. He strikes Evil Cloud and impales him with his hand. As a result, Evil Cloud falls to the ground and leaves the Shitan fragment in the demon's hands. Zio appears and takes the core from the demon using his staff. The demon takes out his weapon and attacks him. Jai pushes Zio and saves him from certain death. Seeing this, the demon decides to leave, claiming that he will take the core from them later. Afterward, the meteorite approaches the city, so Evil Cloud tells Zio that he has to break the core to stop it. He takes his staff and strikes it. This causes the meteorites to completely disappear. Evil Cloud releases his wife's ring, and her spirit appears to thank him for saving the city. Finally, Zio faints and falls into Jai's arms. The next day, the kids head to the Shaxir River to heal Yuan's wounds. However, he claims that a warrior like him doesn't suffer from wounds. Nevertheless, Jai tells him that he still needs to rest, so he immediately complies and lies down on her lap. They arrive at the city by the river, but Zio notices that it has turned into a desert. Shaw explains that it's because people didn't handle the energy there properly. Just then, the spaceship stops, so Shaw goes to check it. Meanwhile, Ju tells the kids that Shaw doesn't have very good memories of that town, so Yuan and Zio affirm that they'll talk to him to make him feel better. Therefore, they approach Shaw, who prefers not to discuss the issue, and tells them that the spaceship is damaged. However, he mentions that there is a crystal mine nearby where they can find the part to repair the ship. Yuan states that they will accompany him for support, as companions should help each other. Nevertheless, Shaw insists on going alone and tells them not to interfere in his affairs. On his way, Shaw remembers how a few years ago, he and his team went to that town with the mission to investigate what was happening. One of his younger teammates claims that he is not afraid of any demons, to which the others start laughing, stating that the last time he ran away. Eventually, Shaw finds the mine. Later on, Zio starts worrying in the spaceship, saying that something must have happened to Shaw because he hasn't returned. Ju then declares that he will track him down. Subsequently, Yuan begins to complain, suggesting that Shaw probably fled. Ju tells him to be quiet and reminds him that he doesn't know what has happened there. On the other hand, Shaw arrives at the mine, recalling a scene with his former team, which entered the mine on his orders as he was the captain. Upon entering, they realized that the miners were missing, so they proceeded to the center where one of the members named Black Spot lit the area, revealing that something or someone had attacked and killed the miners. They discovered a tunnel leading to an underground mine. One of them, named Ho, mentioned that they shouldn't go down because they didn't know what they might encounter. However, Shaw told them that their mission was to investigate what was happening, and if they didn't go down, they wouldn't find out. Consequently, they all decided to descend. They encountered a group of zombies that didn't seem to multiply. Feeling trapped, a girl named Lily threw some bombs at the zombies. However, one of them managed to bite Black Spot. Shaw took the entire team to a control room to hide. On the other hand, Black Spot's blood created a significant spell. Meanwhile, Shaw and the others took refuge in a control room where Fu used a telephone cable to contact the Immortal Army for reinforcements. However, he realized that he couldn't do it, so he sent the signal via radio. At this point, they noticed that the zombies had disappeared. Suddenly, a corpse-eating beast appeared behind Fu and passed through him. Hearing this, Yuan and Zio are astonished, claiming that their father used to tell them about that beast, which is so powerful that even immortals fear it. They ask Ju how it's possible that the beast appeared in the mine. She responds that she doesn't know because after the war between gods and demons, the immortals closed all the tunnels through which the beasts could appear. Just then, Ju manages to locate Shaw, who obtains a piece of crystal for the spaceship. He also sees the spell triggered by his teammate's blood, realizing that everything that happened was his fault. Immediately, the beast appears and attacks Shaw. He continues to remember how the beast attacked Ho while he tried to stop it with rocks. However, upon seeing that his other teammates were dead, Ho asked him to leave and complete the mission by taking the information to the palace. Nonetheless, Shaw stays and takes his knife. He attacks the beast until he sinks it into the ground with a rock. Despite this, the beast rises again and approaches him. Ho sacrifices himself, using all his power against the beast. In this moment, Shaw wakes up and sees the spirits of his teammates, who tell him that he still has to complete his mission because his friends need him. Zio wakes him up and tells him that they have come to support him. He then asks him to protect the others while he confronts the beast. Meanwhile, Yuan is captured by the beast, but Jai stops it while Ju strikes it. Consequently, it throws them to the ground. Later, Shaw approaches the beast, ready to sacrifice himself like Ho, but Zio stops him, covering him with his barrier. Additionally, he uses his power to create a massive explosion, causing the beast to disappear. Finally, Shaw bids farewell to his companions, stating that just as they sacrificed themselves for him, he will do the same for his new friends. The following morning, a warrior takes his magical sword and effortlessly cuts a rock in half. On the other hand, Jai tends to Yuan's wounds, mentioning that his condition has worsened from fighting the devourer. She tells him to rest until he can bathe in the Shaxia River. Ju approaches and begins teasing him by touching his wounds. Then, Shaw thanks Xiao for saving his life in the mine. Yuan comments that they are all a team, and that's why they should support each other. They arrive at the Shaxia River and notice its exceptional beauty. Shaw explains that the stars in the river represent the wishes made by people. Hearing this, Jai comments that there should have been many people there. However, Ju explains that after the events in the mine, demons began appearing in the vicinity, causing people to stop coming. With that said, Shaw parks the spaceship, and Yuan enters the river with Xiao, who observes that his wounds are healing. Yuan then spots the warrior with the magical sword nearby and decides to talk to him. However, the warrior remains silent until Xiao hands his swords to Yuan, who bids farewell to the warrior. But then, the warrior stops him and remembers the day he fought a demon hunter who had those same swords. On that day, the hunter defeated him and introduced himself as Kai. Because of this, the warrior asks Yuan if his father is Kai, to which he responds that he is not, and his swords were given to him by his father, Yuan Shi. Hearing this, the warrior becomes angry, claiming that if he's not a descendant of Kai, he doesn't deserve to have those swords. Subsequently, Yuan becomes angry and says that he has worked hard to become the best demon hunter. Both of them prepare to fight, but Xiao steps in, saying there's no need for it. He also tells the warrior that they don't know him. In this moment, Ju and Sha arrive, asking what's going on, so Xiao explains the situation. Ju asks the warrior to leave and not cause trouble, but he attempts to strike her in two, only for Ju to evade the attack. As a result, Jai discovers that the warrior has the Black Bone Sword, which belongs to a phantom clan. She tells him that if he wants a real fight against a demon hunter, he should let Yuan heal completely in the river. Upon hearing this, the warrior accepts and tells Yuan to meet him at midday to fight, as during that time, his wounds will be fully healed. He warns them that if they don't comply, they will all die. Later, they gather in the spaceship to formulate a plan. Jai explains that the Black Bone Sword is very powerful because the master of the Phantom Clan created it with his power, causing the Demon King to become furious and attack him. However, the Phantom Warrior fought them and defeated their demons. Then, Ju realizes that even if they fight together, they won't be able to defeat him. Yuan affirms that the warrior was defeated by his swords, so he claims he will defeat him, even though he is not the aforementioned Master Kai since his father told him that the swords hide great power. However, Ju doesn't feel safe, so she asks Sha to teleport them far away from there. He tells her that he can't do that because the warrior has sealed the entire area with his power to detect their movements, so if they try to escape, he will find them anyway. Subsequently, Xiao also tries to persuade Yuan to change his mind. However, Yuan tells him that he can't run away every time he encounters someone stronger than him, as his father always faced demons despite everything. Hearing this, Xiao confesses that he has protected him throughout his life despite the risks, and Yuan replies that he promised it to his father. However, Xiao runs away, stating that he doesn't need to be protected. Later, Yuan enters the river, and suddenly Jai joins him and approaches. She tells him that Xiao is afraid of losing him just as he lost his father. She also asks him not to die, as the pain of losing someone cannot be repaired, not even by the Shaxia River. On the other hand, Sha accompanies Xiao, who can't stop crying. The next day, the time for the fight arrives. Yuan gets ready, and Sha helps make him a bit faster while Ju cheers him on. Additionally, Jai gives him a shirt made of spider silk, which is very resilient. Finally, Yuan approaches Xiao and tells her not to worry about him because he will defeat the warrior, even though the warrior is more powerful than him. He mentions that a demon hunter's power comes from their courage. At this moment, Yuan recalls the first time he saw his swords at home. His father stopped him, stating that these swords were meant for the chosen demon hunter. As he finishes recalling, Yuan charges at the warrior, who evades his attacks. Yuan increases his speed and tries to surprise him. However, the warrior throws him against a rock, wounding him slightly. Sha realizes that even though Yuan is faster, the Black Bone Sword is longer. In this moment, Yuan remembers when his father trained him using a long staff. He tied up his two swords and attacked his father. In response, his father plunged one of his swords into a tree and defeated him in a single strike. He also scolded him, saying that he had to practice with his swords before dinner. The next day, his father trained with him again. However, this time, Yuan took advantage of the distance and managed to defeat him. Back in the river, Yuan clashes swords with the warrior without moving far from him. The warrior falls into his trap, and Yuan cuts him with his sword, but it doesn't cause much damage. As a result, the warrior activates a new technique and begins shooting at Yuan, damaging the spider silk armor. Consequently, the warrior tells Yuan that he will easily kill him. Yuan responds, acknowledging that the warrior is much stronger, but he knows he's facing a superior being. He remembers the day he decided to wield the double swords to protect the people in his village who were under attack by a bear. Yuan jumps on the bear, but it strikes him against a tree. However, he attracts its attention by throwing snowballs at it, preventing it from hurting a child. The bear then approaches him, and he takes up the swords. Back in the fight, Yuan tells the warrior that he is determined to use his power to protect others. Finally, he recalls the moment when the bear injured him, causing him to lose control, desiring to kill it. His father arrived in time to stop him and drove the bear away, telling it to hibernate. Back at home, Yuan apologizes to his father for taking the swords, stating that he's not worthy to have them. His father explains that the swords are made of demon iron, so their power is very dangerous. If he feeds them with his blood, they will grant him their power, making him lose control with the sole desire to kill. Returning to the fight with Yuan, he cuts himself a little and gives his blood to the swords, receiving their power. He begins to strike the warrior. The warrior is delighted to see that Yuan has more power. Right then, he remembers his battle against Kai and the moves he used against him, which could have ended his life. As a result, he hits Yuan and throws him into the river. Yuan gets up and declares that he will kill him. He charges at the warrior and throws him to the ground. However, the warrior stands there as if nothing happened. Then, Yuan increases his power, and Zhu congratulates him for putting up a good fight. Later, he approaches them and attacks. Xiao stops him using her staff, but he strikes them again, so they step away. Meanwhile, the warrior watches what's happening. Then, Yuan begins to see them as demons, so he attacks Jai, but she evades his blows until Sha throws him against the wall, and freezes him a bit to train him. Afterward, Xiao approaches him to talk, but Yuan hits him, claiming he will kill all the demons, including them. He then gets up and prepares to attack Jai, but the warrior suddenly appears and plunges his bone sword into Yuan's shoulder, causing Yuan to faint. Later, he asks his swords for power to continue fighting. He then sees his father with Kai in a village where people are suffering and starving. Here, his father feeds some children, while Kai comforts an elderly man who asks for help. Right then, a child warns that the mountain demons are approaching, so everyone runs away. Kai confronts the demons and defeats the first one with his swords, which leads the others to attack him, thinking they can overpower him. As a result, Kai defeats them all and heads to the mountain, where he finds some demon children who start crying. Then, an elderly man arrives and begs him not to kill them as they are defenseless. Later, Xin, Yuan's father, arrives and sees how disappointed Kai is, telling him that his life is meaningless because, as a demon hunter, he has killed to protect his village when the most important thing is for everyone to live. He mentions to Xin that he is going west. Therefore, they bid farewell, and Xin confesses that Kai is his older brother. Years later, Kai arrives at a temple and finds demon bodies on the floor. He enters and meets the ghostly warrior who challenges him to a fight. Years later, while Xin hides the people of his village in a cave, Kai appears with a baby in his arms, so Xin approaches to help him. The next day, Xin's wife tends to the baby, who turns out to be Xiao while Yuan trains. Afterward, Kai asks Xin to take care of Xiao, as he is the world's only hope. He also hands over his 2 swords, stating that Yuan is also part of that hope as long as he follows the path of good. As Yuan wakes up from his dream, the warrior removes the sword on him, stating that, just as Kai spared his life, he will do the same. However, he affirms that, as he becomes stronger, they will have to fight again. Xiao then hugs Yuan, who suggests going for breakfast and telling her about his dream. Later, Xiao is amazed to learn about Kai, and Yuan mentions that if they gather all the fragments, they will likely discover more. Then, the group tries to decide where to go. Zhu suggests a city called Feng, where they can gather more information. Sha explains that Feng is a city of immortals, highly advanced with a lot of technology. They decide to go there, although Zhu mentions that she doesn't want to. On the other hand, in a palace, a princess named Salamadora presents herself to a master named Tianyu to win his heart. However, he remains silent, so the butler dismisses Salamadora. Tianyu has spurned all the women from the west, and the butler wonders who will be able to touch his heart. Therefore, he moves on to the 1000th candidate, who appears covering half her face. This catches Tianyu's attention until she removes her mask and reveals a hideous face, frightening Tianyu, who runs away. Next, his butler, who is also his uncle, approaches him, and Tianyu confesses that there is a girl he has never stopped thinking about. He begins to describe her, mentioning that her eyes light up his life, and her hair is like gold. He reveals that he is talking about Zhu. Therefore, his uncle gets in a car, stating that he will find her for him. However, Tianyu replies that she promised to return to him. So, his uncle tells him that when that happens, he will arrange a wedding for them immediately. Meanwhile, Shaw is piloting the spacecraft when Jai asks him how much longer it will take, as Yuan is getting a bit anxious to arrive. On the other hand, Yuan is training Xiao, making him do exercises. Jai comments that they are not far from reaching Feng. She also mentions that she wants to meet some immortals. Shaw notices that Zhu is acting strange and asks her if she doesn't really want to go to the city. She replies that she's just thinking that Emperor Chong might not know about Yuan's twin swords or how to resurrect Yang's spirit. However, Shaw reminds her that Chong has a lot of knowledge, and they can find another soul fragment of Shitian and Feng. After that, Xiao approaches them and activates his staff, which points to the city. So, Shaw accelerates to get there. Once they arrive, the kids are amazed by the entrance's security measures. To enter, they must wait in a long line and be checked by the guards. When it's their turn, a security camera scans them and grants them permission to pass. At that moment, Tianyu's uncle's voice is heard, announcing that Tianyu will get married in 3 days. This causes Zhu to have a nervous breakdown. Later, Xiao goes to a fruit stand, and the owner gives him a peach, saying that everything is free for the day because the great master Tianyu is getting married. Zhu begins to frighten the lady by asking what they need to do to attend the wedding. Jai realizes this, and Xiao asks if they can actually go to such a celebration. At this moment, a group of knights appears and informs them that Tianyu is expecting them as special guests. Yuan thinks that he must have heard about the incredible things they have done. Inside the palace, they join the banquet until Tianyu arrives and introduces himself to them. Shaw tells him they are there to speak with Emperor Chong. He responds that his father is in meditation, so he invites them to his wedding, where his father will be present during the ceremonial banquet. Jai replies that they haven't been able to buy him any gifts, and Tianyu thanks them for bringing his girlfriend back. As a result, the kids realize that Zhu is the girlfriend. Later, the butler tells Tianyu that the tailors are ready to create the wedding dress. Later, Tianyu approaches Zhu and tells her that the city is getting ready to organize the wedding. She asks him why he wants to be with her. He reminds her of the promise they made. He recounts that at school, some kids used to bully him, but Zhu would come to defend him. Then, they sat down while she enjoyed an ice cream thanks to Tianyu. He asked her to come back to Feng when she grew up and be his girlfriend. She accepted, and they sealed their promise with a pinky swear. Hearing this, Zhu mentions that at that time, she didn't know what it meant to be a girlfriend. She tells him that she was the one who told the kids to tease him so she could defend him and get what she wanted from him, like food and drinks. Upon hearing this, Tianyu takes her hands and tells her that it doesn't matter anymore because the most important thing is that they are together thanks to their promise. Next, Shaw reminds Zhu that if she doesn't marry Tianyu, they won't be able to see Chong, and everything will be ruined. Therefore, she agrees to continue with her role and asks Tianyu where her room is. Tianyu's uncle then tells them that the rooms are ready. However, Yuan replies that they want to go for a walk to explore the city. The kids gather and realize that the staff is giving a signal, so they start searching. In the evening, Zhu stays in her room, reminiscing about her promise with Tianyu and hoping that her team can find the fragment. Meanwhile, Tianyu reveals that he has the fragment in his possession while promising himself not to let Zhu go. And that's how the first season of this anime ends. If you've reached this part of the video, let me tell you that you've been one of the few people to make it this far. So comment the word Guardian in the comments. Remember to subscribe to not miss any videos. With that said, see you in the next video.